Hello, everybody. How are you? My name is Eric Lawrenson. I'm talking today about environmental ethics, which is the field of applied ethics that considers kind of the moral base of our environmental responsibilities and how we relate to the natural environment. There's a lot of things that environmental ethics touch on, I believe. This is kind of why I picked this topic for my presentation. I really believe that environmental ethics are ethical on many different fronts. I don't think it's just an environmental or an ecological viewpoint, but I also don't think that everybody is making a distinction between environmental ethics and our everyday ethics. So I think I'm going to try and bridge that gap a little bit here over the next few minutes by kind of touching on a few things that I think are important in environmental ethics, what I think environmental ethics ultimately lead to, what they affect, and how maybe we can use environmental ethics to shape our world into a better place today and for tomorrow. Environmental ethics, I think, really the decisions that we make in an environmentally ethical perspective have to do with the economics and the law. The social and the money side of ethical decisions are exactly what those decisions influence. Therefore, we've put laws in place to preserve, conserve, and protect the natural world. I capitalize nature here to kind of hit home the point that nature, to me, includes everything and everybody on this planet. We as a society in the US in particular have put laws in place to try and best utilize our resources to sustain our social structures, our economic structures, and thirdly, we think of the environmental structures thirdly, but that I think is changing. I think that's where our ethical decisions, our environmental ethics will come into play more and more here in the very near future. Our economics depend on the natural capital that the world provides. And the natural I think a lot of people understand that the natural capital is vital for our economics. There's really nothing that our economy would do if it weren't for the natural world. But I think one thing that we forget about, or at least don't lump into the same category, is that not only does the natural world provide sources for goods and services, it provides sinks for waste products that come out of that production. That's a big thing, I think, that people need to realize and think about, is that the natural capital going in and the wastes going out are all part of the same system. And even though we don't always see the wastes on the outside, we have to think about those. And so our ethical decisions and our ethical discussions need to consider how we relate to the natural world, how our economy, how our social structures relate to the natural world. We need to decide, there are decisions to be made out there as to where we best fit in to the natural world. And there's many different camps on this. There's a couple of main ones here that I'm going to point out in just a minute. But first, I just think I'll tell you really quick that, this is a pretty recent human dilemma. The Industrial Revolution really has changed courses for this planet. Since the Industrial Revolution took off, we've kind of taken the Earth as ours. We kind of have a dominating type of a mentality over the Earth. We use it to better our quality of life. This has led to many environmental degradations over the years. They're becoming more and more apparent each and every year. And really in the last 100 years or so, I would say, in the 20th 19th and 20th century, people started realizing the population was exploding. People started realizing, hey, we need to rethink some of these things. People like Gifford Pinchot, people like Roosevelt, President Roosevelt, Teddy Roosevelt, John Muir. These two that I have listed here, Rachel Carson and Aldo Leopold, are both authors of two books that I think are really, really good, and especially Aldo Leopold's essay in his book called A Sound County Almanac. His essay called A Land Ethic is really it's just a few pages long. I would encourage everybody, if they haven't read it, just to read the Land Ethic essay out of that book. You could probably even find it online. It's just a really good, it's an introduction kind of as to where mankind should probably be in relation to the earth around. It's a very ecological. He was a naturalist and a scientist, and really kind of spearheaded some ecological-based environmental movements. So those are a couple of shifts that have happened recently in the environmental ethical area. There's kind of two camps here, and we have people that feel that it's a utility, that the Earth is a utility, and we can manage it, and we can scientifically use models to harvest resources. And then there's also people who think that all nature should deserve the same respect that humans do. Everything that's alive on the planet should be given the same amount of respect, and that's a little bit difficult. I mean, because we are in such a complex society and a complex economy, but having that being the basis of your decision making, I think, will at least push you into a right direction, push you into a direction where sustainability is the main thing. And we're learning that using the earth as a utility piece is not sustainable. We thought that forest management and fire management was the way to go, but in the last 100 years, we're learning that by grazing cattle in wildlands or in forested areas, by suppressing fire, by not letting the natural systems go, by eliminating keystone species, you really do affect the ecology and the natural world as a whole. So putting these two camps kind of together into one thought process, I think will guide us in an ethical way for the future. Again, really quick here, the economics, the externalities, I think, is the one thing I really wanted to point out here on the second part of this slide. Externalities are kind of the costs, basically, that the Earth is taking from our production and consumption practices. So they're costs that nobody is necessarily paying for. At least not the primary producer is paying for them, but down the road somehow they usually have to be paid for. They're usually harmful in nature, and we need to understand that these externalities affect our economy, they affect the environment. Therefore, ethical decisions need to be made when we think about externality costs, external costs. This is probably going to be pretty hard for you to read, but this is just kind of a quick little natural capital flow chart that I got from the web, and I'll explain it to you really quick. There's kind of basically three main pieces to this flow chart, and in the box on the far left with the little sunshine above it, that's the Earth capital. That is all of the energy basically that goes into the planet, the air, the water, the land, the soil, the minerals, everything that goes in. All that energy comes from the sun. And then in the middle, the big box in the middle there is our economic system. So we have earth capital coming into the economic system. There's production, there's consumption. And then the 4 boxes on the right are the types of wastes that come out of our economic system. The thermodynamic heat that comes out of our system is a small portion of that, but it is part of the system. There's depleted resources that come out. There's degradations, there's pollutions, there's waste, and usually these wastes that come out of the economic system are difficult or on a too quickly of a time frame for the earth to naturally recycle them. So we have more waste coming out of our system than we have being put back in to the capital. We are living off the principal, not the interest, when we should probably be living off the interest and not the principal. So we get down here now to the environmental ethics. It's a field that looks at our responsibilities related to the natural world. How should humans relate to the natural world? Should our economies be number one? Should the preservation of natural resources be the number one concern? So these are very difficult. There's no right answer to these questions. These are very difficult things to try and manage, but at the same time, they're things that we have to think about. They're things that people in this generation and the generations coming up, I think, will have more. There will be more environmentally charged ethical issues that will enter our workplace, our social circles, and probably our pocketbooks. So these are things that we're going to have to deal with here pretty soon. The deep ecology worldview, I'm going to just give you what I think is a good way to look at this worldview. Now, the ecology of the planet, it looks at systems, basically. It looks at communities. It looks at how things interact. And on a kind of a shallow ecology view, we look at energy in, energy out, and it's based on science. But there's a deeper part that gets overlooked quite often, and I think if we all were to adopt a little bit deeper, if we attempted to deepen our ecological view, I think it would help to get us on the right track, and I think it would help us make environmental ethical decisions that are very, very sustainable. So just a few of these. All life has intrinsic value. There's diversity, that humans really don't have the right to strip the planet of that diversity. Our population is an issue. And I think that the bottom two here are probably the two most important things, and that's that we must appreciate life rather than strive for higher standards. Our quality of life, believe it or not, is pretty good in this day and age, in this part of the world, and I think we have a responsibility to attempt to implement change and to help hopefully make things better for the next generation. So I think everybody should take a look at the land ethic, and I think it's a good starting point for people to start thinking about environmental ethics, and I think deepening our ecological view will help. Having a good basic scientific and biological understanding of the planet is vital, and from there I think we can all live happier, better lives. Thank you.